Corporate finance practice problem using OneNote, common stock value calculation using multiple different methods. Get ready, it's time to take your chance with corporate finance. Here we are in OneNote. If you have access to OneNote and would like to follow along, you're not required to, but if would like to, we're in the icon on the left-hand side. We're in the Practice Problems tab down here in the 1044 Common Stock Value Multiple Methods tab. Also note, when using OneNote, take a look at the immersive reader. Many of our presentations up top will be also mirrored down in the text area. The text area having the same number, same name, and transcripts that can be translated into multiple different currencies and either listened to or read in those currencies, thereby being a good complement to the practice information up top. Closing the icon, we have our information here. We're going to go through the calculations then in the blue on down below. So we have the dividends last year, 2000x0, we're going to assume are 8. The dividend growth rate expectation is 6%. We're also going to assume that the growth, there's going to be standard growth that's going to be mirroring the dividend growth rate of the 6% as well. Required rate of return and discount rate, both 15. Now I'm going to scroll down a bit. What we're going to do is do a couple different methods to get to a similar kind of process, similar type of result, that being the current value of the stock price. So the first method that we're going to be looking at is possibly a method that would be more intuitively pleasing to go through, but possibly a longer method to go through. And the second method will be a shorter method, which may give us a similar value oftentimes, and it'll be possibly easier to do. So if we take this information and think, okay, how can I value the common stock, and we think about our present value type of calculations, then we want to think about what kind of cash flows we're going to have in the future and see if we can pull that back to the present using our present value calculations. With the common stock, that once again a little bit more difficult because we have to estimate things such as the dividends. Are the dividends going to be constant or growing? We're saying they're going to be growing at this point. And what's going to be the value of the stock at some point in the future? In other words, what could we sell it for basically at some point in the future? So if we're trying to value our stock, those are the things we have to take into consideration. So to do that, we could do some kind of analysis in terms of our trend type of analysis with the 6% growth, for example, on the dividends. We might then say, well, the dividends were at the $8, and we're going to then say that there's a 6% growth, calculating that to be the 8.48. Couple ways we could do that. We could take the $8 times the 0.06 and then add that to the $8. We get the 8.48. We can also say that if it was $8 last year, we're going to multiply times 1 plus 0.06 or 106% or 1.06 times the $8. That's going to be the faster way for us to get there. So we're at the 8.48. Now, if we assume this constant growth for the dividends, we're going to say, all right, now if we're at the 8.48, we take that and multiply times the growth rate of 1.06, 100% plus the 6% growth rate, we get to about the 8.99 about. And then if we take that and we multiply it times the 1.06, we get to the 9.53 about. If we take that and multiply it times the 1.06, 106%, we get to a dividend of 10.10 about. And finally, if we take that and multiply it times 1.06, we're going to get the 10.7 about. So, we didn't go that far. Then we're going to add them up. If we add the 8.48, the 8.99, the 9.53, and the 10.10, we get to the 37.10. So if we're taking this out to the 4 years, we're trying to predict out into the 4 years, what's the value of the cash flow that we're going to get if we were to invest here, then we're talking $37.10. But, of course, this is happening sometime into the future, so what we would have to do is present value those cash flows. So when we're valuing the stock, I can think, well, the dividends, I'm assuming, for the next 4 years are going to be the $37.10. Let's go ahead and present value those. I can't use an annuity to present value them because they're not constant dividends. We're saying there's a constant rate of increase, but the dividends are all different. So I'd have to do present value of 1 using our present value calculations and bringing them all back to the present. In Excel, this is fairly easy to do. We can do this for some time out into the future. If we so choose, we do this problem in Excel, so you can take a look at those. So it would look something like this. So that first dividend If we present value it, we'll not show the calculation right here, but just conceptually, if we present value the 8.48, present value of 1, bringing it back 1 period to the present, we get to the 7.37. If we then take the second year out, the 8.99, and present value it back, we get the 6.8. The third one at the 9.53 total amount. If we present value it back, we're at the 6.26, and then the fourth one, we're going to present value at the 5.77. Adding up the present values, then we're at the 26.21. So in this way, we can estimate the actual cash flows related to the dividends, and we can then present value them. That can help us to come up to the current value of the stock. Now, of course, that's only part of the value of the stock, because we also have the issue of the growth, basically, of the stock, the value of the stock as well. So we can see that, just see a couple kind of calculations here. This calculation, the estimated dividends, we're calculating that in Excel as we saw with the calculator, taking the prior amount, which was the $8 times the 1 plus this cell, which is 6%. And then we're continuing that on down. That's going to be the formula basically in Excel. We did that with the calculator. If we add the present value, the basic calculations within Excel, you could do this multiple different ways. We could do the present value calculations with a formula, which would be quite tedious, to do each one of them, because you got to do 4 of them here. So this would be something that you would probably want to do in Excel. If in Excel, then this becomes much less tedious. You can use the present value calculation, present value being the rate, which we would have to use the discount rate here, because we're trying to present value this back to the current time period, and the discount rate would be necessary, comma, number of periods. Then we're going to take for the first one, and we took the periods, we added another column over here to be 1 for the first period, bringing it back, because we're paying the dividends at the end of the year, and then comma, comma, the future value then would be that 8.48. And then if we did the second one, similar process. We're looking at this one here. The formula would look something like the rate would be then the discount rate, 15%, comma, number of periods then would be 2, because this is the second year out, comma, comma, and then future value would then be that 8.99 to get to that 6.80. So that's how we present value these. If you want to see those calculations and work through it in Excel, we have these in Excel as well. So then we can take a look at the price of the stock at the end of 2000 X4, the other factor that we need to basically be considering. So we thought about the present value of the dividends. If I want to value the stock, I also need to know what the price is at the end of this time period. And that's going to be the alter area that we can value this at, because that would be, something we could sell it for at that point in time. So for this calculation, we're going to take into consideration our rate of return here. And so I'm going to say that the estimated dividend, so we'll estimate our dividend out one more time period, meaning we're talking at the end of 2000 X4 is what we're trying to value as of this point. We have, as of that time, the 10.10. So we're going to assume the dividends are going to continue on at that rate for the end of the next period. So 10.10, $10.10 times 106, 1 plus 0.06, that's 6% here, would then give us then the 1071 at that point. So we can estimate out then the next dividend that's going to be happening is the 10.71. We can then think about our required rate of return. The required rate of return we're saying is going to be the 15%. And we know that the estimated growth we said is going to basically match the rate of the dividends, because that's the assumption that we're basically making. The dividends are basically increasing due to the growth, and therefore 6% of that growth we're going to assume is going to be taken up by the growth. And that means that the 15 minus the 6% leaves us with the 9%. And so now we're going to take our dividend that's being estimated, the dividend estimated at the 10.71 divided by 0.09. That's going to give us about, let's do that again, the 10.71 divided by 0.09 gives us about 119. It's rounded here because in Excel there's some pennies that are involved here. So about 118.95 or 119. So that's what we're estimating the price to be at the end of 2000 X4. But then we need to present value that, bringing it back to the current time period. That's what we could sell it for at that point. So now we've got a future value. So we need to present value. It's present value of 1 because we're at the 1 point in the future. It's not an annuity here. So if we took the present value of that, it would look something like this. Present value calculation, the rate, we're going to take the 15%. And then comma, the number of periods, we're going to say 4 because it's 4 periods out, comma, because it's not an annuity. And then the future value, we're picking up then that 118.95 about to give us that 68.01. So now we have basically our two components. We've tried to present value. We've done our best to present value the dividend stream that's going out here at the 26.21 for those 4 periods of dividends. And then we present value what we estimate the price to be. We figured what the price is. And then we tried to present value that back to the current time period at the 68.01. So if we add then those two things up, we're looking at the present value of the dividends, 26.21. Present value of the stock price is going to be the 68.01. That gives us the current value of the stock at the 94.22. So current value, we're thinking then the 94.22. So this is kind of, I think it's a more intuitive way to do it using our present value type of calculations here. But we can kind of estimate that as well as we've seen in prior calculations down here with method 2, which will often give us to a similar result, possibly with a little bit easier to do. So we have the dividend that we're assuming is going to be the 8.48 here, the next dividend out. So we're going to do this same kind of calculation, different method, pulling it from the information up top. If the dividend is $8 last year, we're assuming once again that 6% growth, so it would be 8 times the 1.06, that would be the 8.48 on the dividend. So we're looking at 8.48. Then we got the required rate of return, which we're saying is that 15 required rate of return. The estimated growth rate, which we're saying is 6% because we're thinking the growth rate is matching the increase on the dividend. So that's going to basically take up, part of that rate of return. The 15% minus the 6% gives us that 9% remaining. And if we then take the dividend of the 8.48 that we're estimating basically just 1 year out this time, divided by the 0.09, we get something quite similar to, if not exact, oftentimes to what we got then up top. So two methods to get kind of to the same area or close to the same area. The first method, possibly more, more intuitive, I would think, although more complex to go through. And it might be worthwhile to do that to kind of get a better understanding, of what's going on, and then verify it possibly with the different method down here, or do the down and dirty or the quicker calculation with the second method here. And the two of them oftentimes resulting in the same or similar result.